Hello, I hope that you're sitting because this setup is going to blow you away. But actually, this to me is a very simple hardware setup, a DAWLESS setup. I mean, the term simple is obviously very relative. First off, let's just have a look at how this is all routed, what's going on here, what role each of these pieces of gear plays in this setup. This is the first video that I'm featuring the OPSIX Mark II. This is an awesome FM synthesizer, so that's where all of our sounds are going to be coming from. I'm not really a keyboard player, though. I like to use sequencers to control my keyboards or my synth sounds, and that's where the Oxi One comes into play. Obviously, this is just my favorite sequencer. I feature it all the time. And by the way, if you're interested in the Oxi One, I have a discount for you if you'd like to buy directly from Oxi Instruments. I'll link that here and also in the description of this video. It's a 5% discount. Drums are coming from the Digitakt, which I'm also using as a mixer. So the OPSIX Mark II is being routed through the Digitakt. And if I go over to my mixer here, you can see that I'm adding reverb. It's maxed out. And if I go into my reverb settings, you can see that the decay on that reverb is quite high. I've also EQ'd my reverb here a little bit. I like to usually cut out all the low end because I find that it gets a little bit muddy, especially with kind of a lo-fi muddy sound to begin with. Entering even further into lo-fi land, that's where the Chroma console comes in. So I'm essentially using this as a master effects unit. So the output of the Digitakt is going into the Chroma console and into my audio interface into your ears. My favorite approach to the Chroma console is just running everything through it and really using it as an end of chain master effects unit, a lo-fi master effects unit. You might already be asking, like, why do I even have the Oxi One here? I could just use the Digitakt to sequence the OPSIX. All I have to do is function, machine, bring this down to MIDI, and now this could be a MIDI track controlling the OPSIX. The Digitakt 2 and even just the OG Digitakt, they're both very powerful sequencers. With the Oxi One, I always go off about the matricial sequencer. That's the one that we're going to be using today. I find that with Elektron units, it makes a lot of sense that the workflow is integrated into itself. And that's not to say that it's great for sequencing other units, but in my opinion, there's other more convenient sequencers out there. The top three would be the Oxi One, the Torso T1, and the Hapax Scorp, which I haven't touched yet. Those three units are built specifically to control other units, so all of the brain power that went into building them was focused on making it easier for us to sequence other units. Whereas the Digitakt does a lot of other cool things, but the sequencer isn't quite as strong. So that, to me, that all just kind of makes sense. The way that I personally like to conceptualize this is that each of these instruments on their own goes super deep, but within this setup, which in itself is an instrument, each of these plays a moving part. So I'm just taking little simple elements of each of these instruments to glue something all together. And so let's get into how to do that. We're gonna be creating something from scratch, starting with the OPSIX, the OPSIX? I don't know. You tell me. Argue about it in the comments. I chose a preset that I really like. It's called Extra Knock EP. It's preset 16. That's what it sounds like. I have some hands-on controls over the operators right here in our little operator mixer section. So I could mix in these different operators. This one here essentially just jumps up octaves or down octaves. And then this one, it adds like this sort of percussive effect, and you could choose where in the spectrum you want that ticky sound to come out. I usually leave it around somewhere around there because I like that really percussive feel. So I'll just start by throwing in one trigger into the sequencer and making it a 7-note length for that sequence. I'll change this to a, let's say, a Dorian scale. All of these different colored buttons here, these are different parameters to work with. So let's go with, we've already chosen trigger. Let's go to note. I'm going to choose whatever random step, and I'm going to randomly place notes in here. Okay, I think we might need some more movement here, so I'm going to add an extra trigger into here so we get some sort of melody going on. I'm also going to bring this up the octave right here. And you can sort of go in here and sculpt the notes a little bit. So let's say maybe change the length of this note parameter until something kind of interesting comes up. Let's take down the mixer. Okay, so we have some sort of melody happening here. Let's go over to the pulse parameter. And I'm just gonna add a few of these in here. And you'll notice that for each pulse, the playhead will stay on that step for however long you want it to. So in this case, for 2 pulses, there's no kick. So let's throw a kick in here just for now. We're not gonna keep this 4 on the floor kick, but just to give like a kick, or I should say a metronome, so we know kind of what's going on here. If we want to, we could even change the velocity of these notes. Let's randomize the velocity, give it a little bit of motion there. And from here, we're getting something that's 100% generative. So it'll just keep going. The parameters will keep bouncing off of each other into eternity. So if we want to make this a little bit more digestible, which is what I always like to do, is I'll change the length of this sequence. So let's change it to 32 steps. Something happened there. I don't know where that note came from, but I like it. So we're gonna leave it there. Okay, so what if we change this to 64 steps? I like that. So let's keep 64 steps. Gives a little bit more breathing room, I guess. It's just a bit more variation within the melody. Turn this mixer back up. So all of these parameters are re-triggering after 64 steps, which is what gives this like cyclical melody. If we want a little bit of randomness in there, we could go over to trig probability. Once again, I'm just going to randomly throw these in here and see what happens. So it gave us 4. And if I go to each of these on this step, 77% probability, 97%, 81%, and let's bring this down to less than 50. So now when this trigger coincides with these trigger probabilities, specifically, let's say on this step, there's a 41% probability that that trigger will play on that step. So it's a little bit difficult to explain. Hopefully that was clear enough, but that's the coolest thing about the sequencer. There's just so much room, so many parameters to work with. I also always like to add a little bit more randomness here. So there's like the dice mode here. What is it? Random performance mode. So let's go up the octave 10% of the time. There we go. So we're getting some octave jumps. There's also a trigger probability here if we want to further randomize that. Let's just leave it at 100%, no problem. Re-trigger, if we want to re-trigger some of these notes, give like these like kind of ratchety things. Let's change that to 5% because I don't want too many of those. So for now, that's what's going on with the Oxi One. Let's go over to our effects page on the OPSIX Mark II. This reverb right here, I'm gonna actually change this to riser, and I'm gonna change the decay and tone. So just to give you an idea of what this sounds like, turn this kick off for now. Really bring up that decay, bring up the tone a little bit, and this is what that gives us. I just love that. It's like a nice ambient effects. Going back to this being like really simple, we have our 2 operator mixers, right? So we could bring those down. We have like this sort of lo-fi tone. And there we can control the octave. We have our percussive tone coming here, and then we have our reverb. So that's 3 elements, and I think that's enough to work with to have fun, really. And again, reminder that this is being even further reverbed out through the Digitakt mixer. So if I turn this down to nothing, there's also a bit of delay on that. So I don't want to trick you, like this is doing a lot too. The Digitakt does have really nice delay and reverb. Maybe some chorus? Yeah, why not? And now let's take a look at the drums. I'm actually gonna take out this 4 on the floor thing, create something a little bit more outside the box, perhaps. So let's re-enter in that kick. Doom, 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 doom. Personally, I always like to keep my grooves 1 bar and then add conditions in there. So already I know that I want this to play only the first time through. Do, 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 space, do, do, do. playing with velocity too. So let's say on this particular kick, I'm gonna bring that down a little bit. And this time, this one will play the second out of 2 times. I'll bring the velocity down on this one as well. I always like this condition plus 1 bar approach because then visually you could see your playhead all the time. It's super easy to keep track of, but at the same time, you could have variation within your group. So this is, in particular with my drums, this is just something that I always resort to. I actually have a second kick somewhere here. This one here. So let's actually lower. There we go, the tuning of that one. Give it a little bit of a low pass. And then so that this one, it'll leave a little bit more space for that one. Let's throw this one in. I want 16-note hi-hats for sure. So that's this track right here. Just throw those in there. Let's throw an LFO on there as well. Maybe go with sample length. Just to add a little bit of motion there. So just like I mentioned, pulling little elements out of each instrument. Let's bring this more percussive thing back, take the kick out. Maybe add another trigger in there. This could completely change the melody up completely. So now we have a much more active melody. Right, so I'm just trying different things, just exploring, making really simple changes and gravitating towards what I like. The inspiration of this video is really just about exploring your gear. Finally, the last piece of the puzzle, which we haven't looked at, this will definitely glue everything together, especially within this sort of experimental genre, the Chroma console. But before getting into that, let's talk about today's sponsor, DistroKid. If you're into this sort of music, there's a good chance that you'd want to officially release it to all major streaming platforms. Well, I'm here to tell you that DistroKid is just the way to go for independent artists and producers like myself and possibly you. Let's get into a few reasons why they're great. In terms of what's new, they recently released a smartphone app, which makes checking your important DistroKid stats easy and accessible. The app is now available on Android through the Play Store. Essentially everything that you've been able to do on the DistroKid desktop app, you're now able to do through your smartphone. In fact, here's a list of key features that the app offers you. You might want to pause it now if you want to check them out. In today's day and age, we all know how many hats we have to wear as artists and producers. It can just be a lot, so write the music, produce the music. Then you've got to create content to promote it a few weeks before it's released. Then you've got to continue creating content after it's been released to promote it. It's a lot, and I'm not saying that DistroKid does all of this work for you, but they do make it a lot easier for us with the free promotional tools that they offer. The one I use most is Hyperfollow. It's essentially a free landing page or link tree. It's super clean. You could link maybe your latest video, your latest single, other important links you'd like to lead people to. I also use promo cards whenever I release a single. Just select the single that you would like to promote and it'll auto-generate a few different options for you to choose from. Go with DistroKid. It's just over $20 a year to release unlimited music to all major streaming platforms. You keep 100% of your streaming royalties. So many other tools that they offer for someone who's independent. They're made for us. And there is a discount linked in the description of this video if you would like to join. Chroma console works really well as like a degrading master effects unit. Let's turn it on. Not much of a difference because our mix is at 0. So let's bring it up. Okay. So yeah, it makes it sound so cool automatically. So let's see what we've got going on here. We have Sweeten. This is usually my go-to. What other effects can we use here? There's Fuzz, there's Howl, a little bit too much. Swell. Also kind of cool for this sort of vibe. We have Diffusion, which I don't think is really gonna work for like a master effects, really. There's Movement as well. Once again, that's maybe not gonna work for a master effects, although it could be cool if we had just a little bit of it. Maybe like a little bit of vibrato. It kind of just makes a lot more sense with the Chroma console. And then we have this last effects here. This is Texture. Let's go with, we were just on Broken, Interference. And then of course we have our master mix here. So that's without Slowly mix that in. And now let's see what this riser sounds like. Yeah. Yes, it just brings it all together. Just the drums. 2, 3, and. Bring it back with maybe a different melody, different triggers, a bit more active melody. 2, 3, and. Slow that down. Just one note. Man, we should have started with Chroma Console. On the surface, this is really a modular pedal. You have your different effects and you can mix them in individually. And then of course you have your master mix of everything together. I think that about sums it up, guys. That's enough information for today. Hopefully that was informative to you in some way. If you'd like to join the Discord, it's a free open server where we discuss setups like this and gear and instruments and music and inspiration, all the things. I'm active there pretty much daily. If you'd like to go a step further, check out the Patreon for exclusive content, extended videos as well. And thank you guys so much for being here. Hope to see you soon.